So in the first three maps, they kept running the same type of comps that they ran in the other matches, and I think they played on comfort picks, or what they're comfortable with, as well as not only comfort picks but like comfort strategy and so on. And South Korea managed to adapt pretty well versus them. And when we talk about adapting to opponents, it's mostly problem solving. So like problem solving on the fly, you isolate what you need to counter and so on. So looking at the comp right there, China with the similar comp they run on Hanamura. When they want attacked, it's Winston with Zarya and Diva. And South Korea playing something similar, but instead of a third tank, they have Carpe on DPS here instead. And yeah, it's pretty standard from Korea. They wanna get positions, and once China moves the point here, this is the moment where they lose the fight, in my opinion, because if we draw it out here, so Carpe, he can shoot into this doorway, and he can also get anyone in that angle here. And for everyone else on the Chinese team to do damage, they need to basically walk outside, and it's only Lucio, Zen, a little bit Zarya of course, but mostly Lucio, Zen, and Diva that can do range damage. And South Korea, they don't really have to aggro here. They don't have to be rushing things. They can let China take the point if they want to. And Fate, he just plays this corner here. Let me pick a different color. So he can just play the corner to this doorway and zap whoever, build some ult charge, and Fleta can move up, line of sight. He breaks line of sight, like yeah, basically this angle here is like safe zone. And you see, basically only Fate on South Korean team takes damage, and all they have to do is poke them. So if we would have gone back here, and if we are on the Chinese team, and we wanna think of what we can do, we see that Fleta is babysitting Carpe here with Lucio and Diva as well. And so South Korea, they are basically running anti-dive or counter-dive. They want to counter-dive with Winston and Diva if Winston and Diva aren't with them. So just let it play out a bit. Since China has Zarya, they can afford it going a bit aggro, because normally if you're on Winston and you wanna jump up here, you'd be stunned, you'd be stunned, headshot by Carpe, you'd be flashed, you know, chained into CCs, and then you have Discord on yourself as well. But since you have Zarya with a bubble, and you have Brigitte that can give armor, you can have enough time to put up your own Discord, and you can try and come up with Diva or something, and you just zone them. You don't want to commit on them, but you try and zone them, and you'd keep playing around the high ground here and trying to deny Carpe some space. So they don't make any switches either, which is weird because China knows that Leaf couldn't really do anything since he has 35% ult charge, and compared to everyone else in the South Korean roster, as well as his teammates, it's pretty much nothing when it comes to damage done and so on. So on the second fight, this is when you pretty much have to switch off the Zarya, because you're gonna have another fight, you're gonna arrive at 60% energy or something, I mean ult charge, no, cap percentage. And when you arrive to 60%, you can only have one more fight after that. Let's go back here and see what happened. So they run up high, the bridge here, they just wanna avoid taking damage. They try and scout out where Carp is. Gushu jumps in. So they don't know that Carp is flanking from behind here. And this is just a setup from South Korea to use the Diva Bomb efficiently. Nerf this. And even if they wouldn't have gotten any kills here with the Diva Bomb, the people that escape from the Diva Bomb would be intercepted by Carpe. So I think that's why Carpe was there. Also because he can use High Noon. So let's see what was written in chat here. So yeah, I've chat up on my phone. At Gosepic, it's pretty selfish to ask while you VOD review, but can you please go over win conditions? No, it's not selfish, dude. It's all fine to ask questions like that. So the win condition China had with the Zarya, for example, was that they want to fight on point, they want to use bubble, and they want to use Brigitte to stun when they basically want to play line of sight and force opponents to come to point. But I think that they didn't expect Carpet to play McCree here. Maybe they expected South Korea to play something else. So the win condition for them would be Grav plus Diva Bomb, Grav plus anything basically. There's not many ult combos except the Diva Bomb, but when you Grav, you have AoE heals from Brigitte, you also have AoE damage from Winston, and it's very easy to do damage with a high energy Zarya as well. So they probably betted on the AoE damage plus Zarya energy, and they want to fight with Discords as well. However, South Korea negated those win conditions because they had Carpe on McCree. And Carpe's win condition, not Carpe's, but this Team South Korea's win condition in the first fight was to play, to pocket McCree so he could poke from far away. And once China was on point, let's see here. So once China was on point here, just redrawing. There we go. Once China was on point, Carpe could play wherever he wants, basically. And by him being allowed to headshot and so on, the enemies don't have to die, they don't have to be low, they can be at 50% HP. And by that point, Fate can go in, Fury can go in, you know, Animal can go in and so on. And their win condition is basically poking in that case. Second fight, Carpe sets up behind like this. They want to use Diva Bomb. That's just a simple Diva setup they do. But the win condition here is basically trying to get a pick and outnumbering. They will win the sustain fight and they have Discord, etc. Let's see here. I have no idea why I can't see chat here. 1 second. I can see the chat on my phone, but not here. Okay. So it says, from what I saw with Canada playing goats, they kept pressuring backline instead of losing, and LOSing. I assume you meant goats with Reinhardt, right? It's very different. I guess it depends on, you know, the map as well. I'm not sure which map you're talking about, but I don't remember the game in my head right now, so it's a bit difficult to answer it. But if you think about it, you can't really reach South Korea because they have Lucio. So if South Korea notices that China will rush to them, let's take Epic Pen here. So if China rushes to them like this, all they can do is speed out and kite them and do damage. Meanwhile, they run forward. So in order to reach them, they need to line of sight. Otherwise, they take too much damage and give too much ult charge to South Korea. However, if you're allowed to speed up, and let's say that South Korea is playing on point, or they are playing with everyone here, it's totally fine to rush them here, because they must speed inside, down here, or to point, or forward. So it's only like if they play on high ground, like they open it in first fight, because if they're on high ground, only Monkey and Diva can jump up there, and no one else can commit because they have a Zarya. So they lack the damage from distance, because South Korea can line of sight from the Zarya. Ah, dots. Okay, my bad. Yeah, I don't think it's possible to pressure the backline with the Winston goats in this matchup here, because of the McCree and because they have Zarya. So they scout out Carper because they assumed that he would be there once more, or you know, just wanted to be careful. And you notice as well, Leave is on McCree instead of the Zarya, and he should have been switching to the McCree after the second fight. Oops. After the second fight, first fight I mean, because of the ult charge on Zarya. So it's pretty one-sided in here. Use ults. Wait, actually, let's go back. So China, they have 4 ults, and South Korea only have 2. It's really good of China to not use Zen ult here, because right before now, I mean, because it's it can be easy to trigger Zen ult here by being Winston here. But since they were patient, it was really good, since Animo pulled out his defensive ult before. However, Jonak has his trans up, so they basically trade support ults and play patiently. I guess Sky was thinking of how many hits he's gonna get, and he did a great job in predicting how much damage he will get, because he was about to die, but he didn't fully die. So they use all ults here, and yeah, South Korea can't do much about that. Double defensive. Leave used his Deadeye to reload there. It's pretty interesting here how China didn't win this. If we go to Leave's perspective, Ah, yeah. Leave was missing a lot of shots, so obviously they lacked a lot of damage there. The thing with McCree is that if you headshot all the time, you're gonna do insane damage, but I think they would have kept the point if he had hit his shots. But this was also the first map, and you have to factor in like psychological stuff as well. It's no excuse, but it's one of the factors.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's also something that comes with experience. So, before we start this one. Yeah, they had double defensive, but China had already 100% double defensive. So, Jonak, I assume that China assumed that Jonak had 100% as well, but it just happened that they traded with good timing because he had to charge up his. So China could have been more aggro and possibly focus down Fate or something. Any more questions or anything, comments, etc. before we move on? Alright. So looking at next map here. They play a mirror essentially. And it's pretty standard. You want to play with shield here. Oops. Shields here. And whoever loses the shield first basically loses the fight or the advantage in fight. Because if for example South Korea will win the shield war, so they will have the shield. China moves up, and South Korea can now time their own shield. They can use an old shield, fire up. They just shoot up a shield into the air, and it can drop down. It resets the cooldown timer a lot more faster than China, and then China basically forced to play in here, and eventually they'll try to move here. I'm not sure what the best call out for this is, but it's interesting to see, at least because they try and speed up on South Korea because they notice that they can't really do anything around the well. Let's see here. They play pause keybind is Control P. I'll show it here. Yeah, here. It's the same as pausing in normal scrims. Let's see here. Yeah, you're right about that, yeah. I just think China weren't comfortable with poke comp. I mean, poke comp is double sniper. I'm not sure, like if you want to play double sniper on Lighthouse, for example, Widow is gonna have a really hard time because of how easy or how short travel distance there is to a Widow for her to become useful. So you would have to use Hanzo McCree in essentially, and I think that's too uncomfortable for them. And it looked like they wanted to play around Gushu and Shai. Mostly because of the AoE heal from Shai's, in grabs and such, and also from Gushu with Winston. Hanzo and Junkrat. Well, Junkrat, what would Junkrat spam? If we go back here. So if we look here at the map area, if you play Junkrat, you want to play up here, or yeah, pretty much high ground only. However, if you want to play that into McCree, you have to assume what South Korea will play as well. There's not much you can spam here with Junkrat, because if you want to spam to this high ground, you must peek outside of the wood thing here, and that leaves you open for headshots. If you want to be protecting the Junkrat, you will need to put Diva on, to babysit you, and the Winston can't really engage then because you need the Diva as well. Ah, you meant on well. Okay. My bad. Let's move forward to well. Yeah, you can play Junkrat here. I think it's viable.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Only thing about Junkrat is that there's a Diva eating you. Wait, so here. Yeah, if you want to play Hanzo plus Junkrat, you're gonna leave off one of the supports, which would be, in this case, the Brigade, because you will want the Discord, otherwise you don't have much damage in terms of burst. And if you switch off, for example, Zen or Lucio instead of the Brigade won't be able to reach anyone. And the reason for using McCree in this case instead of Junkrat, I think it's just comfort pick, and assuming that they don't want to fight for the shield. Junkrat is pretty fine here. Like you'll just spam shield like this. You just shoot into the shield. Diva can't eat forever, so it's pretty fine. Yeah, but you can shoot the wall, of course, but the main problem isn't doing the damage, it's the Orisa shield. Because when Orisa loses her shield, she can pick it up like a Rhino again. So she must either use Fortitude, or Diva has to use her Matrix, or the team has to rotate completely. And when there's no shield, you can easily orb with your own Orisa and, dislocate people into the wall. Let's see here. So South Korea breaks the shield first. They actually do a great job playing line of sight here. Let's go to late young. He has no Matrix left, so he's forced. You see, he's forced to back off here, and they use Matrix to compensate for the time Orisa has to charge her shield, or the timer. And this is the thing I mentioned about Orisa using shield and throwing it up. So when you throw it up with Orisa, you can see that the cooldown here is already ticking, and they will basically get another free shield going. And Gushu did the same thing, but yeah, it's a bit slower. I think that, let's see, Fury uses his Matrix to protect the Orisa shield instead of... The difference here is that China uses the Matrix to cycle a shield, meanwhile South Korea uses the Matrix to protect the shield and be able to stay on point much longer. What's the main point of a brick over a second DPS here? Well, yeah, brick doesn't really do anything directly, of course, but you don't have to do anything either. All you want to do in the first fight is to hold steady on point. So Fleta does cover the flanks, and he's also an instant heal basically for the McCree, for Zen, and for Lucio. And if you have a fourth, another DPS, you have a fourth squishy as well. And then if you lose the Risa shield, you basically have 4 targets that are gonna be instantly killed, essentially. So Brigitte is just another body, and also the shield is there to cover for Carpe or whoever, to spam the Risa shield on Team China, against Team China, I mean. And you don't really have to play aggro at all, because you have bongos later on, and you still have Discord, so it's a ton of damage if you win the first fight and you want to keep snowballing. So Fleta is there, he's scouting them with the shield. They notice the speed and just reposition. So in Team China's position here, they're basically running out of time for each push they do right here, and they are forced to make something happen. They could also just run out of the map, make a switch, and reset quickly. Because if you look here, Guju is at 37% energy, ult, which is really, really little. Leave is at 40, Leeting is at 32, and Carpe already has ult, Jonak has already ult, but so does Sky. Fate has bongos, and Fury is 20% higher. So they could also just run out off the map and not give any ults to South Korea. And you see they still lost the fight, and it was expected of them to lose the fight as well, but they used trans, and now they make a switch anyways. You see, since they make the switch anyways, it would have been much more efficient for them to just jump off the map, respawn, not waste 20% of point cap and go again. But they have trans up as well. I guess because they used trans, that triggered a switch to Ana as well. I'm not sure if they wanted to switch to Ana before that. If we look here, the Ana, what can Ana do here? She can nade enemies, but Jonak has already used trans. She can nade her own team to heal extra, and that's probably it. So another thing worth mentioning is that the hard counter to Orisa comps is basically Lucio plus Reinhardt. And all you do is speed into them and force Orisa to... well, you don't force Orisa anything, but you make the shield she places useless, essentially, by speeding in and playing behind the shield. And I think that's why South Korea is running Brig as well, because they expect that they might run out something like Goats or something with Lucio. Why not? And yeah, all you have to do when the enemy rotates is rotate the same direction. They can't reach you. And you really see here that South Korea are aware of what China wants to do. They want to fight them heads on. And so what South Korea does is they just rotate and waste the speed from China, and once they don't have speed anymore, it's more chill. And if you can't reach them, then it's problematic, of course. Let's see here. So, where did China? Well, they used the speed, but South Korea sped back as well, and they repositioned the shield. So they were ready for the speed the first time they speeded around the tower, and maybe it was indecisive, being indecisive, or not trusting the plan. So China went back, and just gonna see here. So everything is good. Yeah, so China just went back, second time they sped, and then they had to commit. Mhm. Yeah, that's right as well. Yeah.
Overtime.
They're taking way too long roads here. Obviously, they are afraid of the orb into the well, so that's why they walk like that. But that's kind of their own fault. They can also walk in here and move like this and hug the wall here and still reach South Korea, but then South Korea just moves like that. However, once you force South Korea out of the point, you probably have a better chance of fighting than moving like China does right now. They can't really use the Diva Bomb if they are on the tower as well. A bit sluggish bombs. There's not much you can do as China in this case, because if you can't reach them and fight them in one go, you're gonna end up with awkward positioning, and you can't really move forward either without simply dying. I'm just gonna move and turn on the lights here. Yeah. Plus, the Diva Bomb is pretty awkward in that place, because they betted on China being outside. No, I mean South Korea being outside of cover basically, but all they have to do is walk into the mini on either side and just shield from the bomb.
Initiating match. Initiating match. Ready for battle.
So it looks like China
Attackers
assumed South Korea will go goats because of the hammer and the Doomfist and Sombra. And the comp South Korea is gonna pull out here is, let's see if it's...
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attackers incoming.
it's pretty much the same
Objective A.
comp that every Korean team or Korean-based team ran in OWL. It's a double sniper, and double sniper is usually the strongest versus Risa and Diva. I don't know the exact chances of winning versus Hammond plus what what China has, but because Hammond wasn't used in OW, but the double sniper is strongest versus static comps, and China's comp is anything but static or immobile. I mean, they also subbed in Crystal instead of Shine for the Sombra. So they scout out everyone in China there. And they don't have to do anything but play line of sight for to be careful with the snipers. And let's keep playing a bit. So if you're on, we can use it like this. So if you're on South Korea here, you can play Widow here. You have line of sight like this. And you can see into the lobby as well. And with Hanzo, you just keep line of sight like this. Actually, this one is more like this. And the thing with double sniper on King Zero attack is that you don't want to use the same firing angles as the other sniper. Basically, you wanna make some type of crossfire so that enemies can't flank from main, but you can also not flank from hotel, because in this case Carp is covering hotel, so Zen here, he's gonna die if he peeks. Fleta, he covers anyone on main, so they can't really shield and hold main. And if they want to do anything, they have to move fast, or they have to move with line of sight like Sky is here, and play around the statue and hope that they don't die. And you can see here again, Carpet covers this flank, or not flank, I mean this area. And then you have Fleta covering in here. So if China wants to focus one of the snipers, they have to commit to only one and not get everyone else. And what Fate does, of course he dies alone, but he's distracting the enemy team from the snipers so that the snipers can do some damage. They realize that, so the reason for switching to Brig and Zarya here is because they can't really do anything, because China doesn't have to show themselves to be useful, because they have Hammond, he can just swing away. Doomfist, he can just punch away. Sombra can translocate. Anna can line of sight. Zen can line of sight as well, and they aren't relying on any sightlines and showing themselves. So going for for Break plus Zarya allows them to just speed into the backline and not really care about the Hammond, Doomfist, etc. And if you look at the way everyone looks, you see that these people are calling out the Zarya. So we can assume that someone is most likely calling in one of these squads. This is just an interesting fact. The majority of the group is looking towards Zarya, which means that we can assume someone in here is the target caller, because Fate is looking to cover the flank here, Carp is looking here, and usually when you're a DPS player, you can't focus on talking at the same time, because you only have so much processing power in your brain, so that you can't really talk and do everything else at the same time to the full extent. Just a thing I wanted to show. So the nano there was because I don't think Leave and Sky were on the same page, because Sky used the nano to save Leave, and Leave knew that he could escape. And maybe it was because it was, you know, a call for using EMP and moving in, so Sky probably expected Leave to stay in the fight and use the nano. However, Leave probably didn't expect the fight to happen, so it might have been a miscommunication in the comms here, and could have been why China lost her. Oh, not lost, but used the EMP and didn't really do the play they wanted to do. We gotta keep in mind as well that China isn't using Lucio, so they have to play really far back with the supports. And Sky always seems to use Nade for him and Zen. So here, use Grab and Meteor Strike. Jonak uses Trance to survive. The only person to die is Animal, which is totally fine because they still have Trance out. And they will get armor here, they have Diva Bomb up, and Fate uses Primal here. So Fate kills China's Zen, so they have no Trance left. And I want to go back here and look at exactly why. So if we look here, there's a Trance. Okay, so the Doomfist doesn't really get any damage in on anyone else because of the line of sight here. Or actually he does. No, wait, yeah, he does. So what else is there? They have no Discord because Zen is versus Winston here. So they lose the damage. What else? I guess they can't really sustain themselves, and that's why they lose. The Trance just heals everyone else up. Yeah.
Objective lost. Stop the payload.
Here they use armor before the fight because they don't really have anything else. And it's useful for the Zen. This is a good trash fight. They force out EMP and Trance. Doesn't really matter that South Korea died there. So getting the grab on Reinhardt here is really important because without Reinhardt, China can't really do anything. And it's also just great with the Diva Bomb. Since, let's see, the Diva Bomb will travel above, land here, so they... I don't think Fury is expecting anyone to die here. He's just using it. If we go back like this. Yeah, he didn't really expect anyone to die. It was mostly used as a way to catch anyone escaping, because he noticed that they are far back. And if they use the Diva Bomb here as well, they can't come and help the Reinhardt. So the focus was very likely to be, the call was very likely to be the Reinhardt. You notice as soon as Reinhardt is dead, they are forced to back off because they have no shield. And it's just basic Overwatch. So 3 on payload. They can't really punish and snowball with the comp they have, so they don't need only 1 on payload and everyone else up. You have to assume that there's EMP and so on as well. And this was pretty good of South Korea. They knew that Crystal is behind or, you know, flanking somewhere. So they noticed that they had chance for shatter, and it doesn't really matter how many you hit or who you hit. You just want to get the pick because there's a 5v6 otherwise. No, in that case. And Crystal couldn't even EMP anyone, but you couldn't know that in the moment if you were the players. So it's not that big of a thing, because if you would be on the South Korean team, you wouldn't be able to know if Crystal is super far back or not because he's invisible. So you just have to guess, basically. And it just happened to be correct. So they focus Reinhardt again. It's very clear that Reinhardt is their focus. They have both support ults up, South Korea that is, so they aren't afraid of using trance early. And you usually want to trance before you beat as well. So the reason for Crystal going on Widow is because playing Widow here is really good. Hanzo is really good on this part of the map as well. And even if you're playing Widow versus tanks, let's say you're Widow here, and if you're shooting up here, Reinhardt can't put down his shield or he's gonna get headshot. And it's the same as you're forcing a Reinhardt that might have Shatter to hold his shield up, and you give some support for your own Reinhardt to Shatter as well, because you had Shatter, and if Fate puts down his shield, he can get headshot, and he has to worry about the Shatter as well. So it's just another layer of mind games, sort of. And Widow is also really good here, on high ground here, and you can play down here as well, shooting through the doorway. You can see he takes the position on high ground. Diva can't contest him because Diva has to be with Reinhardt. So they speed, and they look for Shadow with the speed. But South Korea just backs off as well, and they notice that they can catch up very quickly. If China wouldn't have died, if Lee wouldn't have died here, it would have been a pretty good fight for China, because it would have been 6v5. But once they are forced into this corner, they can't do anything really. Gushu had 0 shield as well. So they're trying to get a Shatter. As soon as you hear the speed up here, you know it's gonna be a Shatter. And to counter the Shatter, you just send a Diva Bomb up as well. And you don't do it immediately, you do it after half a second to a second, when you notice that the enemies are moving up. And you can send the Diva Bomb flying mid-animation for Shatter as well, as long as you're a bit further back so it doesn't hit the Diva body. The mech, I mean. And the grab there was just to try and catch anyone for the Diva Bomb.
Огонь по готовности!
Initiating match.
So South Korea, they will play Orisa with Diva and Widow plus Junkrat, I think. Let's pick up chat here.
Ready for battle.
Hi Silkas and your bench mob. So the comp South Korea runs, Fate is just switching here.
Ready for battle.
They also ran, most Korean teams ran this in OWL as well, and it's, I don't think they pick it because it's super strong. It's more because they are used to it and because they don't have the same amount of time to practice something new. And it's just the easiest way to have everyone on the same page. One of the things in OWL that was really important was to be as efficient as you can yourself before you start thinking about the enemy. And being on the same page with the team, for example, everyone knows the strat, everyone knows what angles and positions this you should take. For example, Carpe will play here in this window, or here. Wait, let me take a different angle and turn this off. Okay. So Carpe, he's on Widow. He's gonna play here or here. Different color. Here or here. So if he plays by Anemo here, that's usually where you want to start as Widow, and it's to cover this sight line. And when the enemies move up, let's say that they move up here, or maybe they move up here, you can still stay, if they move up to alley, yeah, however you say it, you can still stay by Anemo, but you usually want to relocate so that you're shooting here, and let's see here, I forgot the Orisa as well. So you also have the Orisa shielding here. That's the first spot. The second spot for Orisa is shielding here. And you want to move to the second spot when the Widow moves as well. And it's just to cover for the rotations that the enemy does, because if you have a Diva here, around statue, you can still hold here with Orisa, but you want to move back because you can't really spam much with Junkrat. So if you're here with Junkrat, you can spam into hotel, and you can spam on point, you can spam on statue, etc. And with Orisa, you can just drop down to point if you need to. And Widow, she can, if she gets focused here by Diva or whatever else, she can just rotate to point like to the other window here. Or she can just go to Anemo as well, if the enemies rotate back. And China, with their comp, I think they assume that South Korea will run Orisa, so they just try to run something with high mobility.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The way to beat the South Korean comp the best way is usually by double sniper, like Hanzo Widow as they opened. So you see Carpe is focused here, he just rotates to Anemo, and they can't do anything. And Fate rotates as well, because you don't want Orisa too far up, because otherwise she just is useless. And you want to force the opponent to move the point, and if you have to move the point, you just drop down as Fate does. And you see here, however the opponent rotates, Carpe rotates as well. So if they rotate back, Carpet just moves. If they come to point, he just moves to the other window. And they can't really do anything here, Team China. They're simply out-rotated.
Dein Schutzengel ist da. Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
So Fate was a bit late to the rotation there, but it doesn't really matter. The good thing for China here is that they got a tick, so now they have to play for the point and try to sneak in some percentage here and there. And by doing so, Fate is forced to rotate to point, and no one else can play in the open on high ground anymore. Let's look at the ults here. So South Korea has bongos, they have Diva Bomb, and Fleda uses his tire really often. And one of the things with Junkrat you want to do is to use the tire before the fight happens, because there's a travel time with the tire, plus you want to be safe with Junkrat. So maybe you have to position yourself really far away, and after the tire has exploded, you still have time you need to spend on to run back to the fight and so on. So by using the tire early, in early fights or before fights, you cut the time you have to spend on running essentially, and you have more uptime. They have, so a thing they can do, South Korea, if they really need damage, like if they lose Fleda for example, they can combo Valk plus Bongos and just try and shoot at anyone they can. They don't really have shields on Team China. They have 2 seconds of Matrix, but that's it. China, they also have Jonex Trans, so they can fight on point with Trans. And if you then go to China, so they have Bomb plus Primal, they have Nano plus Blade coming up, and they can use Blade plus Beat if they need to, to support the Blade, in case you don't have Nano, or you need to use Nano to heal someone. Then they also have Hammond Bombs plus Primal as a third option if they get Team South Korea to point, and they just drop the bombs on point and knock everyone around. That's something Jonah can counter as well with his Trans. He can try and clear the bombs there, or you have Fleda with Tire, you can clear bombs as well.
Helden sterben nicht.
So this is a really bad fight for China. They can't do anything in here. So, I mean, the bad engage, not bad fight. Bad engage because if they want to fight in here, they can't use the Blade, and the bombs were most likely used to zone, so that South Korea are forced to stay inside and they can't drop the point anymore. Because if they want to drop the point, they have to drop from the same source basically, and they can't keep high ground easily. Guju is forced to... He's not forced to use Primal, but he uses Primal to knock people around. However, he's forced to leave high ground and basically make the Primal useless. Carp is gonna have a lot of free shots here, because no one can contest him except Guju and Leitian. He gets contested though, and if China would have kept fighting in here, Fleda would have done a ton of work because of the spam. So all the ults that South Korea popped weren't useful, because they use bongos, but they can't really show themselves for bongos to be useful. Valk is mostly used to heal, and Pyre didn't get anything.
وريهم قوتك.
30 seconds remaining.
Actually, it was a okay engage by China. It wasn't bad at all. It just looked bad because Crystal died with Blade Up.
Objective lost. Stop the payload.
So they keep the comp. It looks like South Korea are making a switch from Orisa to Winston Goats, but I would say it's better to use Reinhardt in this case instead of Winston. So they engage here early just to contest the payload.
Nerf this.
As you see, if Fate wants to show himself, he's just gonna get stunned, so they can't really do anything to stop the brute force from China here.
All systems checked out.
So Guju uses Primal to
Back in the fight.
make it a... So it's essentially a 5v3. And he's gonna get melted, but he knows it of course as well. Fate isn't gonna kill anyone. Crystal here tries... This is when Crystal gets killed by Fleta and the Whip. But I assume that he thinks Mercy's with him, so that's why he stays. And he probably doesn't notice that he's not being healed. So Mercy even looks at Crystal, sees he's okay. Yeah, and so yeah, she switches to Winston. So if the Mercy would have stayed with Pharah, they could have tried to keep killing and move up. They can't really win anything off escaping here. Only thing is that if they don't kill Jonak, they can't win the fight. But if they kill Jonak and they don't fall back, they can still heal up Guju, because Sky is gonna have nano soon.
Nerf this.
And you see, Guju jumps in, and Mercy moves up a bit. So I take this as a sign of Mercy messing up the fight here, right here. And if Mercy wouldn't have fallen back, it could also not be Mercy's fault, because everyone else here is falling back as well. So it could be that someone in this 3-man squad is calling for a retreat, most likely Sky, because he's the one facing back. It could also be Leave. But Guju seems to want to push this, and if they had kept pushing, they could have kept fighting with the Pharah, and in my opinion, they could have won the fight. And now they are basically forced to reset.
Огонь по готовности.
So if we look here, Sky uses Nano to save. That's a mistake though, because Lijiang is gonna die here for sure. There's nothing that can save him. It would have been much better to use the Nano on Leave or something to farm up ult. Or Crystal with Barrage. So yeah, he loses his mech. Mech is lost. They get a trans out of South Korea, but I'd say trading nano for trans is way better than saving the nano and not getting the trans out. But I don't think they expected Jonak to use trans here. Jonak most likely used trans because Doomfist came in. And let's see if Fate is cooldowns. Yeah, so Fate didn't have any jump, and he probably didn't want to use his primal, and they have Animo's beat coming up. So let's see if there's anything else. You have Barrage plus Valk coming up, and with Barrage plus Valk, the only place you can do is, or not the only, but one of the best places, using Valk before a fight, damage boosting, and try to have everyone basically on a mini nano. So once leaves, they can just move in for free.
Justice reigns
It could also be why Jonak used trans, because they wanted to aggro.
Helden sterben nicht.
Now I'll show them.
So they used, let's see here. China used 3 ults, Barrage, Nano, and Valk. South Korea used, let's see here. They used only trans and Brick ult. And grab as well, yeah. But that was before. So it's 3 for 3. China is the one winning this. Really scrappy from South Korea, in my opinion. Yeah, it's pretty scrappy.
Remaining. Seconds remaining.
Let's move a few seconds beforehand. So if you're Team China here, let's see. We want to make a plan about the next fight. And we have Late Young with the most information. So you can see Fate, Jonak, Animo. And they only have, well, they have Primal, so they're gonna use, I assume that they wanna use Primal plus Diva Bomb. And then that's the first one. And then, I don't know, Leave can be the second ult to try and catch someone off escaping. So they basically sandwich. And from South Korea's side, just looking for everyone's perspective there. They can see Late Young. They can assume that Late Young has bomb because they haven't seen it in a while, plus as well as him being really far up. There's also no one else that can scout so far up from Team China, so it's you know, not a super obvious read. And it's only them, yeah. They don't see anyone else, and they have to be careful because if Doomfist would be to the right side, they can get cut off really easy. So let's see here. I'm not sure if South Korea is expecting the bomb here. They might be, and it could also be that Fury they try to get everyone further in so that Fury can use his bomb, because Fury isn't rotating with them, so it means that he wants to do something when his matrix is running out, essentially. And Fate is alone here. Fate is not being matrixed, which means that well, it's obvious that they protect the the core, but it looks like a setup rather than a reaction. This guy is expecting to get dove by Winston or something here, so that's why he's so far back. And Li Jiang is really far back as well to push, plus also bomb.
Nerf this.
Vamos, meteor strike.
Yeah, you can see here. He beats as soon as... I'm not sure if the beat is a response to the... It might have been a response to the Devo bomb. Yeah, so Fate is going for Sky. Sky predicted that Fate would come. So one thing here. When Sky is... when a Winston is attacking a Zen and a Mercy is healing, Winston will never be able to kill the Zen because Mercy simply out heals. And if I'm not wrong, it's she's out healing the exact same amount of damage he does per second. So Mercy being here is pretty much negating Fate's setup. Oh, flank. Oh, jump. Nothing else.
Boosters engaged.
So Leave isn't able to do anything.
Nerf this.
This is a smart thing from Fury. Once Winston jumps forward with Primal, it stops everyone else from helping the Winston by using bomb here. The bomb placement isn't really that good because if the bomb lands behind the corner, anyone that would be here would be saved. And I think China overreacted to the bomb. So if we move back a bit here.
Boosters engaged.
Okay. So if you're China here, and you see the bomb coming out, let's see.
Nerf this.
Yeah, they overreacted to the bomb. If the Mercy would have just fallen here, she would have been totally safe.
10 seconds remaining.
Really smart from Fury.
Victory.
It was pretty scrappy from South Korea, but they managed to punish China's mistakes. However, China was doing a great job punishing South Korea and the way they tried to snowball in the choke there on the second point. If they wouldn't have had a unfortunate engage at the end of the second point, they would have easily taken that.
Initiating match.
Let's see if there's any questions in chat.
Initiating match.
Oh, he actually did. Okay. Yeah, I didn't notice it. It's pretty easy to miss stuff like that.
Ready for battle.
I'm gonna move forward.
Initiating match. Ready. Ready for battle.
So China does the same type of compass on King's Row.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attackers
South Korea just opens with
Defend objective A.
Sombra Genji, which is it's similar to Genji Tracer, just that you're not playing around flanks as much as you are with ult combos. So you want to do EMP plus Blade, Primal plus Bomb, Nano plus Blade. You have a free type of win conditions here, and they can also support Blade with Beat. China, they can do EMP plus Doomfist, they can do EMP plus Bomb, Bomb plus Primal, and Nano plus Winston. They can do Nano plus Doomfist as well, but it's kind of inefficient in my opinion. So they just scout, see what's up. Notice that they aren't holding on plateau, they aren't holding high ground, which means that they must be on the, so China must be either here or here. And if you look at the timer here, they can't see the comp yet, so, and obviously they have scouted a Winston because Winston is missing HP. And Carp is behind as well. But before Carp went behind, they wanted to scout if it's some Orisa comp or dive or goats or whatever. So Late Young is just taking some damage. They can't do much here unless they get a fist in. Oh, punch him, but. So if we look here, China, what can they do? They want to fight here because it's easy to get tons of damage with Doomfist. Great for EMPs. They don't have EMP right now though. Sky can out-rotate really easy. And it's easy to damage it with Winston as well. However, South Korea switched Sombra to Zarya and Genji to Brig. They'll counter Sombra, they'll counter pretty much anything here. And the bubbles will help versus Doomfist. So the Zarya is most likely because of the Doomfist in this stage of the World Cup. Not only like the grand finals, but the teams that ran Winston with D.Va and Zarya, it's most likely because they expected Doomfist. So South Korea is in a really rough spot here with Jonak. He's gonna die for sure. And Fate plus Vlada, they know they can't really engage in there. They must deal with Anna as well as Doomfist in main. Getting a tick here is fine. A second tick would be amazing for South Korea. China is letting them take way too much ticks on point here. They need to play much faster with their comp. And it's very likely that they try to focus too much on Jonak.
Objective lost. New defense point.
So if you're on, imagine you're on South Korea now. You have a few options here. You want to snowball, you know that Late Young is dead. You have 6.5 minutes to work with. You can speed through main, and speeding through main, it's really simple, but it's really bad as well because it's easy to get flanked from any side essentially. And people can be on high ground, they can be on high ground here or semi-high ground. So the other option is moving through what they call sunny, because this is the sunny side and this is the dark side. because it's dark inside. So if they move Sunny, Anna can play here and on the high ground behind the wall here. Zen can be there as well. Not Anna, I mean Zen. And what else? It's easier to find grabs because if you move this side, you exclude this area, and if you exclude this area, the only area you have left is main plus the cave here. Versus if you go main with Zarya, you have to choose either left or right. And if you choose left, enemies can move spawn, they can move inside here. It's essentially the same, yeah. So Guju plus Crystal is trying to focus down Jonak here. It's very obvious. And the downside of doing that is South Korea can get a ton of space on point here for free. If you look here, Lei Ting is already dead, and there's not much you can do against Lei Ting being dead and boost you with Nano going on. It's I think it's just aiming wrong with the Nano. The Nano was most likely supposed to be for Lei Ting. And since they can't really finish off Jonak, Crystal and Guju are basically negated. So Karpa and Fury and everyone else on point, they are fighting 4 versus 4 with stronger heroes.
Meteor strike.
And now they're switching to Hammond, most likely because they want to keep the point. So it's like it's not any comfort pick or anything, it's just to have a chance to recover, because they're throwing away ults and so on. So in this case, South Korea just outplayed China on point, and it wasn't anything big. It was because they expected a fight here with Jonak, so Lucio just peels, you can finish him off. They get the Diva. Unfortunately, Sky misses the Nano, and the Diva dies. Lucio dies as well. So South Korea will then play Orisa with Widow and Junkrat here. And let's just move this forward. This was one of the comps we played a lot in Fuel. And the way you play this comp is you can play on low ground and high ground, so there's a few differences. My favorite is playing on low ground, and you shield here with Orisa. So you shield with Orisa, and you have a Diva here, maybe you can have a Diva here as well on high ground, no, here. And if they're playing Widow, you can send Diva there to deal with the Widow. You can have Diva help with taking some spam for the shield. You have Junkrat firing everywhere, you know, doing splash damage and so on. And when it comes to the Widow, you want to start with Widow down here. This is very common. You don't have to start with Widow down here. You start with Widow behind the shield, because if they want to deal with Widow, China that is, they have to engage onto Plateau, this area. And if the enemies engage on the Widow, she simply hooks up here and plays up here. So this is first spot, second spot. And if she's being engaged on here, and it's not safe to go back to Plateau, you just hook here. And then he has sightlines like this. If we make it like this. So Zen has sightlines like this. And Mercy, she can easily go from high ground to high ground. She can go to Fleta, she can go to Fate, Fury, etc. So that's how you play the OWWC comp. And then there's the one on high ground here, and it's essentially the same thing, but with Widow you rotate like this when they engage on you, and you want to save your hook until they engage, because once they've used jump, boost, punch, etc., or dash, they can't reach you on the other high ground. And with Junkrat you just jump over with your mines, and Zen, he would play around here or here.
Five, four, three, two, one. Attackers incoming. Defend objective A.
And the way you beat that comp is simply by bullying off Orisa slowly from her position. You distract the Widow as well. And you want to get the Genji behind high ground. And you notice, as soon as they engage, Fleta disengages, Carpe disengages, Jonah has a disco down. They can't kill anyone. So either you focus Orisa or you focus denying the flanks, or disengages.
Feeling powerful.
So as you see here, Widow is perfectly fine here. And even though they killed Fleta, they killed Crystal, they can't do anything. Guju is about to die. Widow can't do anything either. And the Widow is trying to counter the enemy Widow. And by having your own Widow on Team China, it denies this flank on high ground here. So Carpe can't really move up this high ground, because when he uses his hook, it's like a Pharah that uses barrage. She's prone to headshots, everything, but she's also moving, of course, but that's a small thing for pros. So that's why Carpe is playing bridge here, and why everyone else is playing this high ground.
Helden sterben nicht.
So Leave isn't doing anything directly, but he's indirectly denying positions for South Korea. And because China doesn't stop the fight, South Korea just ends up with awkward positions. And I'll just keep it playing. So you can't do much against our Nano Blade, but the thing we have to notice here is that Fate switched to Winston immediately, because even if you have Bongos, you want to use Winston instead to get the high ground here with D.Va or Winston and stop the snowball. Bongos isn't going to be useful at all unless you have a ton of damage, like let's say you have a McCree or something, or a Reaper. And he switched to Brigitte as well. Yeah. No specific counter, it's just a good pick. So it's a standard fight. Stop the snowball, punish mistakes. And now they want to keep Primal ready for the next fight, and they will have Trance as well, but Trance isn't going to be the key here. It's most likely Primal that's going to be key, because Primal will stop any push essentially on second point here. So he moves in, Crystal isolated, they can't help, and it's easy to clean up the rest. Another thing here, Fate will position here, which is a really common spot in OWL when you're playing Winston and you have won a fight and the enemies aren't able to scout you. It's like after a team wipe, you set up here. because your jump will be ready to escape, and you can easily scout the opponent from where to engage. China is still focusing Jonak here, and I think it's a mistake because they're forgetting that Dio is high ground, Winston is in the face of their own backline, and their own Zen is dying instantly here. The Lucio isn't doing much either. And because they go for the Zen all the time, they aren't able to survive with the backline, and what they could do instead is place a bubble so that Jonak can't discord. And if they have a bubble in front of Jonak, he has to play forward. And the reason for Jonak being so forward up right now is because he wants to be able to discord. Standard fighter as well. And they just keep doing the same thing with taking a high ground and jumping on the enemy afterwards when they engage, and Guju has used his jump. So this is the position I was talking about. You can see everything here. So Grab is eaten. I think, yeah. He just back out. It's a pretty scrappy fight from China. They're just using ults without any sense. The Diva ult there, I can see why Leitian was using the bomb, but it was because more like a panic ult rather than a strategical ult because of the like differences in it's not high ground, but it's like elevated area, whatever it's called. So the reason for switching to Reinhardt here is because they simply feel that it doesn't work to jump to Jonak, but they don't have to jump Jonak all the time. They just don't see that Fate is always in the face of the backline. Fury is always in the face of backline. Carp and Flood as well. And South Korea is intentionally baiting China into diving on Jonak. And so they pick Reinhardt to, possibly deal with the Discord and be able to play more reactively. I think China is feeling stressed in this moment, and that's why they switched to Reinhardt, because it doesn't make sense from our perspective. However, in their perspective it makes sense because they see less options and it feels more logical. And so South Korea, they can't really engage onto a Reinhardt, and Flera just happens to get caught off. If I would comment South Korea on something here, it's the patience they have and the ability to solve, problems on the fly. It seems like most teams that end up stressing, it's not like full-on stress. It's like in different levels, of course, but your ability to solve problems. And the problem for China in this case is, how do we deal with Jonak? How do we stay alive? And the ability to solve that, or like to think of some possible solution, is more limited when you're feeling stressed than when you're tilting, etc., or maybe it's nerves, pressure from playing on stage, etc. There's a ton of factors. I think South Korea has a lot of experience that allows them to be calm and remain calm which allows them to think more. So there's not much to say here. They just use ults, keep fighting. So if you're China in this moment, you're not feeling good about the game. You have one more map left, and if you lose next map, you're out of the series. So on Gibraltar, we see they had a break after last map as well. So on Gibraltar, we see Shy on Widow here, and Widow, you can play Widow permanently on both sides on every point on Gibraltar. It's like one of the best maps for Widow. So that's why we see both teams try to make Widow work, but you also see China try to make it work with double sniper, and it's something that hasn't been as common. It was common in OWL, but the downside with double sniper is that if you deny Hanzo and Widow sightlines plus also rotations, you can't really... Yeah, let's take that when they attack instead. So this is a standard setup. So Shy is playing in a really weird spot. He's playing inside here, and it's most likely because he's afraid of Winston and Genji. He's not really afraid of the Widow, because if he would be afraid of Widow, he would have been playing in PC or something here instead, or even up here. No, actually he wouldn't. It makes sense. He could be afraid of Carpe. Carpe isn't afraid of anyone here though. His sightlines is basically, he's trying to negate or counter a Widow, Winston. If they counter, or if they take control of the blue thing here, the tanks can't do anything about the payload until it's right here. And the supports are forced to play in IT.
Boosters engaged.
So Shy is pretty useless right now, because he can't get any sightlines. So if you look here, the only sightlines he has is straight up here, and up, oops, and here. And there's nothing else he can do, while Carpe has basically the whole map.
Feeling powerful, and I'm not even angry.
Let's move back here and see what happened. So Jonek is kind of greedy here. Yeah, he got shot and picked off. That's South Korea's fault, to be honest. So what can you do as South Korea? You want to deny high ground. If you deny high ground, Widow can't play high ground here. And if Widow can't crossfire from this angle, you can take over IT where the supports are. And you can push in with Widow yourself here, while your tanks are coming from A.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
Yeah, pretty easy fight for South Korea.
The payload has reached the checkpoint.
So as South Korea, you want to finish off anyone that's late spawn. You know that Zen is coming up. Zen here is very likely to die, and it's gonna delay China from fighting equally for another 15 seconds or so. So you want to take over the spaceship, plus also control the spawn doors.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
So South Korea lets China walk in for free here, which is a minor mistake. But we have to keep in mind that they also have people running back from spawn, and they need the Diva to be able to protect the Zen, and also keep pushing the cart. And Widow plus Genji are needed on the spaceship. So Jonak is pretty much zoned here. Really easy to see. It seems like they aren't trying to play around denying Jonak as much anymore.
Into the iris. Into the iris.
That dragon was pretty good. So the double sniper here is really strong versus South Korea, because if Jonah can't peek, you have Hanzo dealing with the Winston, and you have Discord on the Winston, and he's gonna melt super easy. And then Shai can focus completely on the Widow duel with Carpe.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
Feeling powerful, and I'm not even angry.
I think the Nano was used on Winston to build up his primal. And not really to kill anything. Bomb is used to counter the blade, but obviously Vlada just gets resets and escapes.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
Shai does a great job in getting picks here. And he does more than is expected out of him. And Gushu just cleans up everyone that's 1 HP. So the way they held each other alive in here for so long was allowing China to try and get some positions going again. Pretty good rotation by South Korea. So Crystal is getting a dragon really fast.
60 seconds.
And the second part of the map is one of the hardest parts in the whole game to attack on, if you don't manage to snowball. And it's because of the spaceship.
Seconds remaining.
Pass into the iris.
Nerf this.
N'échappe à mon regard.
All systems checked out.
I think Li Tiang does here. You should never fly up with a Diva so far up that the payload pushes while you're falling down, because there's almost no distance left to travel, and it has happened several times in OWL that Divas C9 while they're in the air. So this is just cleaning up who is in forward spawn. Well, old spawn, I mean. So if you look at the odds here, as China, you have Dragon, you have Bomb. So what you can do with Dragon and Bomb, you can send a bomb flying over the tanks here, so that you cover backline, and you send Dragon down this way. Or you can send a bomb here, this way, and Dragon that way, so that you cross each other basically. And as South Korea, you want to speed up and find something with grab.
Огонь по готовности.
Getting good shoot there is
60 seconds.
pretty fine, but you can't really contest. As South Korea, you probably feel a lot of pressure in this moment because you have no ults to work with, and you used grab and you only got 1 kill. You're feeling great as China because you used dragon and you have another dragon coming up.
30 seconds remaining.
So this is a great thing by China. Shy, he's taking control of this sideline, while Crystal is taking control of this one. And there's nothing South Korea can do versus Shy, because if they want to move up to the payload, they must keep the Reinhardt shield up. Otherwise, Reinhardt will get headshot, Fury will get headshot, everyone else will get headshot. And they have to keep in mind that there's a Hanzo with arrows shooting in the back. So they must play with their shield faced like this, you know, sideways almost, and they gotta hug together. And D.Va has to Matrix. So China are doing a great job here. Hi, by the way, Oliver.
10 seconds remaining.
If you guys have any questions and so on about, or comments, etc., just write them out in chat. And I'll do my best to give the best answers I can. So in this moment, you can't really have super planned fights. The way most teams operate is you simply rely on instinct and you try to make the best of whatever situation you have.
Nerf this.
It's really good that no one died by that bomb. That's a really tricky bomb to hide from during overtime, because you gotta contest the cart as well.
Is approaching its destination. Round 1 complete.
So Carpe was doing a ton of work here by covering sideline from behind. If Shy would have been
Score.
hooking the other side, Carpe would have been able to kill him. So
Sides.
Shy couldn't do as much there.
Initiating match. Ready for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attackers incoming.
So if you look here at the channel, they're running in the double sniper, and if South Korea doesn't play aggro with D.Va and Winston, China will be able to outpoke South Korea easily. Carpe won't be able to shoot both snipers at once. So that's why we see Carpe later play in the low ground, and that's because of the hands up.
Bunny hop. Let's do this.
So it's a pretty standard fight so far. You're just pushing cart, taking some positions, poking. China can't really do hard engages.
Time to raise my
And if we look here, China has a dragon already, which is awesome for them. It means that they can get a ton of control on payload, but yeah, it gets eaten, and South Korea can engage whenever they want after that.
Helden sterben nicht.
So the reason for them diving in here on IT is because Zen and Anna are basically free targets without D.Va and Winston there to aid them. And Shy can also move in here to the side, get some shots in. Carpe can't kill anyone because he's running back. And Fleta is forced to be on cart.
Nerf this.
This is a really good fight for China. So if Fate isn't killed now, South Korea will be able to get back in here and contest. However, yeah, it's a lot of time to buy, so it just resets. So the upside of having Hanzo here is that you can deny spawn entries, and you can deny the right side of the ship here with your dragon. So the dragon was used pretty poorly because it activated right here, and he sorry for the light. So Crystal wanted to fire the dragon so that Fleta has to run through the dragon and everyone else has to as well. However, he could have fired the dragon straight to Animal here. And Animal doesn't have Discord on him, so they couldn't have known, but he had Warlock. So Hanzo was essentially just a bit too far up position.
Pass into the iris.
Helden sterben nicht. وريهم قوتك.
Who's ready to take some punishment?
So here, what did China do wrong for Korea to take the round just then? Ah, you meant on third point, yeah. Well, it was, I can take it after. I forgot what I said. Too focused on this round. So Dragon gets eaten. That's pretty big for South Korea. So South Korea's win conditions here is deny the Widow with... they are forced to take the duel here with Widow versus Widow. And Carpet positions himself so that Hanzo is forced to be in the same sideline as Shai. And that's an easy flick for him. And Fleta's job is basically contesting payload. It's the same as having Tracer in old dive, or old pre-Brigade comps on on Gibraltar. Anemo is playing line of sight for both Widow and Hanzo here by the stairs, so that's why Anemo is there. So South Korea is more reactive than China is proactive.
Nerf this.
I think Li Tiang misclicked. He forgot to shift here. Or it's very likely that he placed the bomb because he wanted to cover both corners, or like both sides of the corner, so that they can push the payload past this corner and up the ramp. I still think it's a better ult to shoot up the Diva bomb so that it lands maybe here.
وريهم قوتك.
I am unstoppable.
Pass into the iris.
Der Kampf ist noch nicht vorbei.
The reason for running Mercy in this comp as well is because you can damage boost both Hanzo and Widow, but you want to damage boost Hanzo when he uses Dragon as an example, and then you have a free res if you miss the Widow duel, like it just happened. That's why Mercy was used a lot on Junkie Town in stage 1 of OWWC.
Helden sterben nicht.
Survival of the fittest.
So the moment they switch to Hammond and don't manage to stop the cap, this is basically where South Korea is throwing the whole match. Oh, not whole match, but the last point plus... No, the second point plus last point. It's a really awkward retake here.
Nerf this.
So even though the bomb didn't really kill anything, or was even able to kill anything, Fleta valued his own life instead of simply, you know, staying on the payload and possibly dying, because after the bomb explodes, even if he dies, Fury can then come in, Jonak is there, Anemo is there, and they wouldn't be positioned this far up if they didn't plan to retake. And I assume that as soon as Fate was dead, they prepared to run back.
Boosters engaged.
So that's just a pot shot from Shy.
وريهم قوتك.
Nothing special. So right here, let's see, where did Shy die? Or Crystal, I mean. So, from how it looks from Team China, Crystal wants to take this angle. And then you have Shy trying to snipe Fleta. And he will be able to also rotate around point up here, or he can also fall back if needed. But since Crystal is zoned, and also Fate plus Fury moving in, that means if China wants to deny Karp his angles and also try and fight Jonak or something, Shy has to overcommit and overextend.
وريهم قوتك.
So Fleta is challenging Shy here, but it's like a skill matchup. It's nothing strategic about it. It's to stop Fury and Fate from being shot in the back as well.
Matrix activated.
So Late Young shouldn't fly back like that. I know that he tried to kill Fate, and actually it's okay to fly and try to kill Fate, but you're really risking losing your mech, and if you lose your mech here as China, you're gonna lose another 20 or 30 seconds.
Dein Schutzengel ist da.
So right now South Korea is doing the combo that I mentioned before for China. They send bomb like this, it's gonna explode this area, while Fleta shoots Dragon like that. And it basically kills anyone that's trying to escape. Oh, actually it wasn't Fleta, my bad.
Into the iris.
It was Crystal.
Pass into the iris.
Nerf this. Suiting up.
Der Kampf ist noch nicht vorbei.
Let's move back a bit here.
Pass into the iris. Pass into the iris.
So Carpe gets shot by Shy. Where's Shy? No, Crystal, I mean. Yeah.
Nerf this.
That's a really good bomb by
Der Kampf ist
Late
noch
Young.
nicht vorbei.
I don't think Fate was expecting it to enter the dome. So what Guju is doing here, he's waiting to use Primal because he wants to save his HP but also knock people in timing.
And I'm not even angry.
He wants to knock people while, yeah, being efficient with the swings, so to say.
Routing power to forward barrier. Routing power to forward shield.
So here, he's gonna rotate corner, and by every swing, he
Nerf this.
when he's not able to knock back, he's hiding. And when he's able to knock back, he's moving forward. So here it's Crystal and Shai just doing a ton of work, while Leitian and Gushir is making space. Not much to say. So let's look at the questionnaire you had. What did China do? So I'm assuming you're talking about this round. So what China was doing wrong is that, or they didn't do anything wrong. I think it's just how the overtime fight played out, because they were using both support ults versus both support ults and beats Valk essentially, and you have a ton of HP on everyone else on Team South Korea, so you just don't have enough damage, and that's I think that's why they lost the fight there.
Attackers incoming in 30 seconds. Five, four, three, two, one. Attackers incoming. Stop the pain.
Pretty good of Shai to pick off Jonik there. It's not an angle Widows usually start with, because if you start here as Widow, you're betting on that you're gonna get a kill. If you want to escape this, you have to hook to window, to the bridge, and you need Matrix or a bubble. It's also really easy for D.Va to knock you off. Your other option is to run through the stairs here, really slow, and then try and hook. And meanwhile you're doing that, the enemy Winston and D.Va can intercept you. So this spot is a really risky spot that Jonik and everyone else on South Korea probably didn't expect. And they want to fight early because they only have 1 minute, and it's the old rogue strat,
30 seconds remaining.
but with different heroes of course. Good dragon, denying the overtime touch, or trying to deny it. So in this moment they have to let South Korea push up a bit, otherwise South Korea has the advantage because of the ramp. So Shai and Karpa are basically dueling here. That's the only thing they can do. Fleta and Crystal are not dueling like exactly dueling. They are more like, it's like a McCree versus McCree in a team fight. Just that you shoot arrows instead.
Nerf this! My APM! All systems checked out! I'll show them!
Into the iris.
Crystal doing a ton of work. He has another dragon.
Into the iris.
I think it was really beneficial of Shai to take this aggro position. It caught South Korea off guard by a lot. So I think a lesson we can take from this position alone is that South Korea are basing a lot of, or they are expecting the standard stuff. How do you say it? Not standard per se, but they don't expect China to invent new things that they haven't seen or rarely seen. And it could be one of the key ways to beat South Korea.
Attackers incoming in 30 seconds. 1. Attackers
So,
incoming.
another interesting thing here is they want to play Bastion.
Payload.
And the reason for playing Bastion is because they only need to push up the ramp. It's pretty easy to protect Bastion. And it forces South Korea to basically come up with some immediate solution. If you lose, if you die as Bastion, you're basically done for. You need to swap. So if South Korea aren't able to scout out the Bastion, they aren't able to counter it that easy. But I think that since Fury sees it, he reports back to everyone else. They're not going to switch anything, but they are going to switch their positions. They aren't going to engage here, they aren't going to engage down here, but they must engage before the cart reaches here, of course. So what they want to do is, they want to set up Carpe so that he can either flank or he can get to the backline somehow, because the shield will be in front of everyone else. So him as a hit scan won't be useful at all. While everyone else, they just play by IT here, because they don't rely on the shield or anything else. Leave is pretty late here. He should have been with the main squad. And here's the hard part about playing Bastion here. You're forced to have late game deal with Carpe, because both these supports can't fight with Orisa and Bastion up here. And the reason for running Brigitte is because you still want to have heals on the Bastion, and you want to have heals on Guju as well. So you have a small amount of heals from the payload, because payload heals the attackers. And then you have Fortitude on Guju, so whenever the shield goes down, he stands in front of Bastion and just uses Fortitude. And now if Carpe plays calmly here and he doesn't die, he can easily pick off Leave or Mercy, Yveltal. And it was really close for Fate to C9 here. It's only 0.06 meters left. So once Bastion got dealt with, that's how they lost here. They can't really recover at all. They have no ults, they have nothing. And it's really rough to take positions again. So if you want to recover here as China, you have two options. Either you switch to double sniper or something that can instantly kill enemies without ults, or you switch Orisa plus Bastion. So yeah, all you have to do here is South Korea. You can't. This fight isn't planned out or anything. It's just you're trying to make the best and try to stay alive, etc. and clear cart. That's all you're trying to do right here. So if China had wiped much earlier, they would have been able to take new fights, think a bit calmly about what they want to do next. And they shouldn't. Like, the problem with China right here, it's most likely stress setting in. They use Valk, they use Bomb, and they don't really have to either. So by using Valk and Bomb like that, they throw away all the opportunities for the next fight. And they most likely switch to Lucio because of the Valk used. Or maybe they used Valk because they want to switch to Lucio. However, yeah, you see, you can't really do much about this. A bomb is still a bomb. And that's, yeah. They lost as soon as they died on Bastion there.